It were the exchange of the theaters. It was folklore manifestation, different in the country. That was the easiest way to establish the first contact. So I think that even in my country we have to continue to emphasize that.
So hello, Mr. Ivanic, thank you so much. We would like to thank you for the honor of joining us here today at the ICG in Berlin. We would like to ask you a few questions related to cultural diplomacy, just brief questions, no need to further go very deep in. So first of all, if you wouldn't mind, we would like to start talking around the topic of cultural diplomacy. So how would you define cultural diplomacy in your own words?
The precondition for any sort of the normal discussion and normal development, and especially for the peace, is better understanding.
For sure.
You have to know each other in order to solve some problems, if there are the problems. And there's definitely a role of the cultural diplomacy in that. Through that is the easiest way to understand what is opinion, what is the main idea of the other side. You cannot find solution if you don't know what the other side would like to achieve, and then you can be able to make a compromise. Without the cultural diplomacy, this is not possible. Then you will not meet each other, you will not know each other, and there is no precondition for the solution. There are some elements which are working quite good, but it's not enough. We have to emphasize that even more. And really, my understanding, there are prejudices if you don't know the other side. Whoever the other side is, there are prejudices. And if you make your decisions based on the prejudice, it will be always wrong. So cultural diplomacy is something which is really much more needed. If you are able to put the people from the different ethnicities, from the different countries together, and then to speak about their cultural values, that is the first real precondition for any sort of the agreement.
Absolutely.
That is something which is a new challenge. People typically believe that there is a cultural heritage of every people and that don't need to learn about that. And especially how to use it in a diplomatic, negotiations, diplomatic relations. From that point of view, this is something new, something really new, and I think that this institute, the academy, is doing a very pioneer job, and I'm quite sure that the prize for that will come in years to come, because that would be recognized. If you ask a typical politician now, what do you think about the cultural diplomacy, they will not have so many, they cannot have so many positive things. But realistically speaking, if you know what is how the things can be developed, what this institute or this academy is doing is, for me, very positive.
Absolutely.
It was not so strong, especially not at the beginning. But we had a war. And the first contact among the people was to these institutions. Folklore, for instance. The first meetings where basically the people met was not sport, which typically people expected. It was cultural events. It were the exchange of the theaters. It was folklore manifestation, different in the country. That was the easiest way to establish the first contact. So I think that even in my country we have to continue to emphasize that, to have it even more than we really had. My personal experience is whenever I could, I decided to have the closest friends around me were the women. Two reasons. They are much more, they are less radical in political statements, much more ready for the peace and compromise, and they are much more honest. Once you have support of the women, they will never change that. In the case of the men, my experience was completely different. They can just like that, they change their views and their positions from the alliance, they could be easily your political enemies. In the case of women, that, at least in my case, never happened. You know, you have to change generally the society. In my society, the role of the woman was to preserve the family and not to be so involved and not to be so visible in the public. I think that's our man's responsibility to change that, to allow the woman to be also, and that needs to change the role of the woman generally, not only in the politics, but generally, to have more rights to do what they really believe what is good. In in the universities, in the media, in the judiciaries, in the law enforcement agencies, everywhere, not only in the politics. We are living in the world which is very connected. It's much more connected than anywhere in the past, and it will be in the future even more connected. So that means there is no possibility to have isolated societies. What is very significant is the role of so-called international community. In a lot of countries there is a rule, but it's not always, they don't apply the same rules in every country. Big players are trying to have their benefits, their friends, and they don't apply the same rule everywhere. That's not good for the democracy and the peace. For this general question, my key message would be, we have to apply the rules on the same way everywhere. Which is not the case, and this is the biggest danger for the democracy, but also for the peace in the world. So that is reality, and please don't impose democracy, don't use imposition of democracy like excuse for some selfish-based interest. Democracy is too big value that it cannot be misused in that way.
Absolutely.
We are at the beginning of that process, let's be very honest. My country didn't have a real democratic experience because in a history we were the part of the big Ottoman Empire where we didn't have individual rights. Then we have a communist system where we also didn't have individual rights, and which is the basic element of democracy. So we are here just basically to learn what democracy is. So we have to do a lot more in my country also. To stick with the promises, not to promise something which is not possible, which cannot be delivered. We have a case of the Northern Macedonia. They changed the name and they couldn't have the date of the beginning of negotiations. So if someone is doing something, you have to respond in a responsible way. That's one message. So if you promise something, deliver that. And that will encourage all the pro-European forces within every country. If you see that you can achieve that one, and second one, again the same message: apply the rules in every case on the same way. Don't have favorites in any of these countries. Just apply the same rules.
Well, that was very insightful. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.